below that, you can't qualify. It's very difficult to qualify. Or even if you were to qualify, your interest rate is going to be so much higher, and you require to put a lot of down payment. So credit score is also very important, right? And the higher your credit score in Canada, the better the interest rate the bank or the private lenders are going to give you. Okay, the next step. So working with a real estate agent. So it's very important to work with a real estate agent, because not only do they help you with your paperwork, they also help you with negotiations. There are some things you won't see technically when you just walk into a house, but because the real estate agent is experienced in that area, and be able to tell you, oh, this house is like this. For instance, you walk into a house and automatically they can smell like, okay, there's a possibility that there's a mold in this house. Some of those things you might not know because it can be covered up with perfume. Like let's say if I go put like sprays around my house, you might not know I have like mold issues, right? So there are some things that the real estate agent will be able to pick up immediately. For instance, you walk into a house and you look at the floor and you know, oh, there's a possibility that there's a water leak somewhere. So having to work with the real estate agent is very important. I remember when we got our first house, one of the things was the roofing actually was already 20 years old. But my real estate agent at that time didn't compensate for that, or didn't say, oh, I'm going to negotiate and then you get some money for your roofing. But recently I closed on a house where it was the same issue, and I had to negotiate for my client, and he was able to get $12,500 towards roofing. So it's important to get a real estate agent, and it's very good at negotiating. Like I said earlier, so the real estate agent also assists again, like I said, with your home search, with paperwork, with closing, and they'll also give you great advice as well in regards to like the location. For instance, if you have a big family, the kind of home that is suitable for you, versus if you're just a single person, different things like that. They will definitely give you great suggestions in that light. So definitely working with a real estate agent is very beneficial. Plus, quote and unquote, is at no cost to you, because when you're buying a house, let's say the house is $400,000, right? You have to pay for that. So the seller is the one that will actually now take the money and pay the real estate agent. So people should not be scared to approach real estate agents because they're like, oh, I have to pay this real estate agent this amount of money. As a buyer, you don't have to think that way. It's mostly the sellers that end up paying the real estate agents. Okay? Yeah. Okay. So once your pre-approval is done, once you're done getting the real estate agent, then you want to start house hunting. Like I said, you might want to buy a $600,000 house, and you go meet a mortgage broker, and they tell you only qualified for $300,000. That means you might need to work a little bit more on your finances, right? That means you might need to change your taste a little bit, right? So getting pre-approval done early is very important again, like I said. So I think all the things to consider when house hunting, locations. So location is very important because, for instance, if you have a growing family and you have toddler kids, for some people, downtown might not be ideal for them, right? Because downtown is pretty busy. They want it more like a family-friendly neighborhood. So those are things you might want to consider. The kind of home. Are you a first-time home buyer? Are you looking to generate income? You might want to consider a 2-apartment home if you're looking to generate income, because it has a secondary suite, and whatever rent you get from that from the basement apartment might assist you with your mortgage. Lifestyle, the kind of lifestyle you want to have. For some people that are looking to get like a $1 million house, it depends. Like, again, it's up to you. Lifestyle is very important. Like, you want to consider that as well. And special features. Some homes come with mini split. Especially new builds, they come with mini split. Are you looking to get a house with a mini split to save more energy? Things like that is very important here. Okay, the next slide. Okay, making an offer. So once you see the house that you like, the next step is to make an offer. And when making an offer, I'll tell you a key thing. Home inspection is very important, especially if the home is below 5 years old. But then again, that's quote and unquote, because someone can get a new home and they don't manage the property well. And so you might still need to inspect that property, even if the property is 3 years old. But technically, a lot of homes that are built in Newfoundland require at least 8 years of warranty. So for some new builds, you don't even need to actually inspect it. But if the home is greater than 5 years old, you will definitely need the home inspection. Because there's some things that are hidden, like I can come into this building looks perfect, there's nothing wrong with the flooring, everything just looks good. But then when the home inspector comes and inspects, he will tell you, oh, the roofing, the roof might need to be changed in 2 years' time. So those are things you can skip just by looking at the surface level, right? So you need to actually be more prepared, especially if you're getting an existing property. When you make an offer as well, you have to know, because I've seen a lot of Nigerians, I'm not categorizing Nigerians per se, but where we are from, we can make in Nigeria, for instance, you can put in an offer for multiple properties and more. But in Canada, it's totally different. You can only put an offer to one house at a particular time. So let's say if I see a house in Paradise, that's for example, and I really like the property. Then next week, another beautiful house comes up in St. John's. Until that property in Paradise until I close that property in Paradise, I can't put another offer for St. John's. I don't know if that makes sense.
Why?
Because it has to be approved by the mortgage broker. So so once you're pre-approved does not mean you actually approved for financing. Because a lot of people get that wrong, and he will go more in depth into that. For instance, I can go to the bank today and they tell me I qualify for 400,000, right? And everything seems fine. My income document seems fine. My T4 seems fine. Everything seems fine. 2 weeks later, I probably go and take a credit card, or maybe a loan, get a new car, and then I go back to him again, and it's like, oh no, you can't get this mortgage because you have added some things on your credit, so hence the deal is cancelled. So before you actually go to another property, one has to be closed first. Yeah.
So what about if I see a property in Paradise and change my mind and find another property somewhere else? Can I withdraw my
interest? Yeah.
So that's a bit tricky, because if you see a property, and again he's here, he's gonna answer a lot of those questions. If you see a property in Paradise and you absolutely love the property, and then let's say 1 week later it's another one in St. John's, that's not a valid reason to come out of a binding contract. It's only, let's say, they come out completion is done, and then they see foundational issues, structural defects and stuff like that, then you can come off easily.
But the valid reason is my reasons, right? It's not the seller's reason.
We understand, but legally it's not right.
So on this, you have to be careful.
Exactly.
In
so
choosing.
You really have to make up your mind and say, okay, this is the house I'm going for, and you're not switching around, Because I've seen people do that. They might see a house today, oh, I really love this house, and then next week another house comes up, and they're like, oh my goodness, what was I thinking about this other house? And they want to switch. For new builds, it's kind of easier, but when it's an existing property, it's so much difficult. Because with a new build, let's say it's the same builder, let's say if I see a house, let's say 30 cell Wilfred, I'll give an example generally, 30 cell Wilfred Grenfell in Kenmount Terrace, and I want to switch to 32, because I like 32 better. And we have not really gone far. Let's say I put my offer on Monday, and today is Friday, the lawyer has not really done much, the mortgage broker has not really done much, and all of that. I can plead with the builder. I say, okay, I really like this property instead. Can I switch? And the builder might then be like, okay, you can switch. But for an existing property, it's different sellers. It's not the same seller. So the builder is the same person, But this existing properties, okay, let's say he can be selling his house, and I like his house instead. And then all of a sudden, she puts a house up on the market, and I want to go to her instead. So it's a bit conflicting when it comes to existing properties. But if it's the same builder, it's easier. But legally, you can still come off from that deal, but know that you won't get your deposit back. So for every house, you might need to put like a 2,000 deposit or 1,000 deposit just to show your commitment. But if you just come out of the contract for no valid reason, then they might have to retain your deposit, right? Okay. Yeah, like I said, you can also make multiple offers at once. And negotiating price, repairs, and conditions, like I said, that's where your realtor comes in. Like I got a couple houses before I became a real estate agent, and I can see the difference clearly. Like some of my realtors did not negotiate anything at all for me. Did not say, okay. In fact, we got a property, and with this property, there was no washer and dryer in the basement, and the realtor did not do anything about that. But if I'm working with a client, I'm definitely gonna push for those things, right? Like, taking for instance, like the roofing aspect I told you guys earlier, nothing was done about the roofing. It was a 20-year-old roof, and it's like, oh, nothing can be done. But I push for those things, right? I push for those things, and my clients definitely, get their repairs done and even get money back. I had a couple clients who get money back in that for repairs and all of that. Yeah. The next slide. Okay, so like I said, so once you submit an offer and the offer gets accepted, then the next step is inspection. If it's an existing property. So when I say existing property, a property that someone probably sells after a while or has lived there for a while, right? A new build, you don't need an inspection because a new build comes with warranty and is freshly built. So pretty much you're not coming to assess, oh, is there a flooring issue? Is there a leak somewhere? Is there a mold somewhere? But with existing properties, because one has stayed in that house for a while, some of those things come up, right? So once you get that offer accepted, the next step is home inspection for an existing property. And if it's a new build, then you go to home inspection. And note that home inspections is at the cost of the buyer, not the seller. I don't know if anyone has a question on that aspect. It's at the cost of the buyer, not the seller. And the reason why it's at the cost of the buyer, sorry about that. So yeah, the reason why home inspection is at the cost of the buyer is because the buyer has to protect himself. So let's say if I really love this property that is 500,000 and I just go without no home inspection, and after a while it comes up that this house has foundation issues, I wouldn't know. There's someone who got a house and had to spend 60,000 after that. Yeah, it's like because like the hot water boiler had there were issues, there was leaks in the house, different things. And he was trying to save up 700,000 from home inspection. That's like about 70,000 is a home inspection fee, or $700 or $800 in home inspection fee. He was trying to save that amount and ended up spending 60,000 in less than a year. So it's very important that if you're getting an existing property, especially if it's 5 years old and above, get your home inspections done, right? It's better to pay the $700 or $800 and like your mind is set to that, okay, this house is the best house for me or it's convenient, rather than going for a house, no home inspection, and then it has a lot of issues and you end up paying so much money. Because once that key is handed to you, that house becomes your house. It becomes a responsibility. You can't, let's say if it's the seller, you can't take the key and go and be like, oh, Mr. Tunde, yes, your key, I don't want the key. Like, don't do that. Like, it's not done here in Canada. Yes, you don't do that in Canada. So once that key is handed to you, the house becomes your house. It becomes your responsibility to pay property tax, to pay your mortgage, to pay your insurance, and so much more, the repairs and all of that, maintenance. That house becomes your house. So it's very important that you make the right decision. You see, home ownership can be very stressful. Something like the process to becoming a homeowner can be stressful. But again, that's why we are here to make it easy. Okay, finalizing on mortgage approval. Like I said, the fact that you get pre-approved for a mortgage does not mean that the mortgage broker will definitely give you that exact amount of money. different things might come into play. How well are you managing your finances before closing will make a lot of difference. There are some people that will go through the entire process, and then the lender might say on this day, like, let's say if you're to close your house on April the 5th, for instance, that's maybe like 7 days away. And on April the 3rd, you go and make some drastic financial decisions. You go and take a couple of cars on credit, buy a new car, all of that. And then if you're unfortunate, the lender goes back and check on your credit. You can cancel on that deal. So the house you have got, the car and all of that is, like, you don't want to get into that state. Another thing, like another mistake that some first-time home buyers make, or home buyers generally make, is also changing their employment before closing on the house. I've seen cases where, due to change of employment, one has had to lose the house they really liked, right? So you don't change your employment. Let's say if you're full-time somewhere and you have been in this company for 2 years, you don't just automatically, let 1 month to closing or 2 weeks to closing, say, oh, I'm getting a new job. Because the lender needs some history. So you can't just switch your employment and say, oh, I'm getting a new job, I'm going casual. We're seeing those instances, and that kind of results to one losing their house entirely, and it's not a good situation. So a couple of things he will definitely get more in depth, because that's his field, but I'm just kind of giving you a heads up. Okay, paperwork, getting the paperwork ready. For every mortgage to go through, or for every house to finally get to closing, there are a couple of people that are involved. Like I said, the realtor is involved, the lawyer will have to do the paperwork, the mortgage broker as well will have to go through your income and your credit and all of that, and make sure that, okay, you're able to get this house, or you're able to get the house you want, right? Home inspector comes in handy if you're getting an existing property. You need to get insurance as well for that property, and different things like that. But again, he will go more in depth with that. Yeah, so once your mortgage has been approved, then the next step is getting home insurance. So you actually, definitely in Canada, you cannot close on the house without actually getting the home insurance, right? For instance, if your service provider, if you have a car and your service provider is probably RBC or maybe TD, it's best to have them together, because then, let's say if you have a car and a house under one insurance, under one insurance provider, they tend to give you some more discounts, right? But let's say if I'm with RBC insurance and I'm getting a house and I'm going with TD insurance, that's two different institutions, so they might not really give me a group kind of plan, right? So it's important that if you're with RBC insurance, if you're using RBC insurance, as your car provider, you can also use them again as the ones that will provide that insurance for your house as well. Okay. When it comes to closing date, I'll just give an instance. Let's say I put in an offer for a house, or okay, let me give an example. Let's say he's put an offer for a house on March. I'll go back a little bit, because right now March, so let's say March 15, he's put an offer on the house, and the house is to close on April 15, so that's in a month's time, right? So let's say the house is to close in a month's time. Then he has to ensure that before the house closes, he has sent all the necessary documents he needs to send to his mortgage broker. You have to send your pay stubs, your T4s, all the documents required. Because if he doesn't accomplish that, then he won't be able to meet up with the closing date. So it's very important that even though the closing date might be set up for April 15th, you have to make sure that you also have a responsibility as a buyer. You do have a responsibility to play, because if you're unable to meet those requirements, then the closing date might be extended, or you might end up losing on that house, right? So that's why we say we should confirm the closing date, and that's that's where also a realtor comes in play to also keep you informed in regards to the progress okay, how is this lawyer going ahead with your file? How is the mortgage broker handling your file? And all of that, and kind of just keeping you in the loop of things. Ensuring funds are ready for down payment and closing costs. This is also very important. You don't want a situation where you don't have the available funds for down payment, or we are also seeing situations where some people might, when it's very close to closing, and maybe a cousin or someone needs money back home, and you just just take out 10,000 and send to the person back home. That's a big red flag to the lender. And in Canada, like that become much more strict with, when it comes to money laundering, anti-money laundering, and all of that. So they might raise the question, where is this money going to, and all of that. So you have to try to avoid as much traffic on your account as much as possible. If the down payment is there and I've been careful for 90 days, leave that down payment there. When it's time for closing, the lawyer will go through and make sure, okay, that down payment is there. The mortgage broker also ensures that that down payment is there. But if you go ahead and take off that money before closing day, it might really cause a red flag and you might end up losing on that house. So there are a couple of key things you have to watch out, right? So don't touch funds that you're putting in a savings account. In other words, don't touch the funds you're putting in your savings account for down payment. Just keep it there until after closing. After closing, you can do whatever you want to do with your account. But if you start doing like big transactions, moving 5,000 here, even from your checking account, or moving 10,000 from your savings, it might cause a big red flag, because then they'll be like, why is this person doing a lot of transactions? Like, they might need to post questions on that file, right? So that's very important. Okay. And one thing, when it comes to closing costs as well, so one thing I didn't know earlier as well. So closing costs actually can come from your line of credit. It can come from a credit card. So when we got our first house, we didn't know that. So we had to save everything before we actually went to buy the house, right? But as you when I became a realtor, I had to understand that, okay, your closing costs can actually come from your credit card. It can actually come from your line of credit. So let's say if you have your 20,000 saved for the 400,000 house, and then you have a credit card that is approximately 7.5, you can still use your credit card and pay for your closing costs, and later on put the 1.5 back there, or sorry, the 6,000 back there, right? You don't have to wait till you have the closing costs, which that was one of the things we had to do. We had to make sure that, okay, we had all the money before actually going to buy the house, right? So that's just a bit of a financial relief, if you got to closing costs where it can come from your credit card. But the down payment, if you're not using the 0% down payment program, it has to come back from your savings account. Okay. I think I've actually gone through all of this again. Like documents, the lawyer will go through the documents, the down payment and closing costs, everything is good to go. Then they give you the keys, they transfer all duties to you, like you're not the new owner, you're not responsible for monthly mortgage payments, right? Let's say you get a house of you get a house of 350,000 and your monthly payment is approximately 2,000 a month. You have to be responsible. It's no longer like if you was a seller, for instance, it's no longer his duty to pay for that, to pay that 2,000. You are now the homeowner. It's like you're paying rent, but at an advantage, because you're building equity. You're building equity for that house. The house is appreciating, and you can end up using that equity again to reinvest in another property. I'll give an instance. Let's say you bought a house, well, now in 2026. Let's say in 2024 you got a house that was 400,000. Right? Some of the houses in that was bought a couple years ago in Newfoundland, or in 2023, for instance, it was worth 400,000. But now the market in St. George has become very competitive in such a way that a lot of those houses have appreciated. So if they're looking at the worth of that house, like now in 2026, that 400,000 house is now worth 550,000. $550,000. So you have an equity that has been built of 150. So let's say if I want to buy a second property, because I've seen people do that. If I want to buy a second property, I don't have to be saving up all this much money to go and buy that second property. I can take the 150 that I have and reinvest. Let's say the second property, if I'm still lucky and I get like 5%, which is possible to still get 5%, especially if I'm moving into the house. Because for investment purposes, it might be 20% if you're going to your second house. So with that 150,000, I can take some money, you know, I can take the equity and now get a second property, or even a third property if that money permits me, you know. So rather than waiting to like the general advice I always give, but like rather than waiting to buy or waiting for the market to become favorable, the best time to invest, I would say, is now, right? Because someone who got the house like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, that house now is possibly what, like I said, 150,000 above what is, like, you know, what it was worth back then, and you can use that money to invest in other properties or other you know, expenses. Yeah, the key takeaways, yeah, start early and get pre-approved. I'll just take it back, like I said earlier, you don't wait to get a house. If you're planning to get a house, like I said, in June, you might need to start now. You might need to speak to the mortgage broker now, because if you wait all the way up to June and you go speak to him, you might say, oh, I'm sorry, based on your credit score, you're not approved for a mortgage at this time. Come back in 6 months' time when you've worked on your credit. It's important that in Canada you work on your credit. Again, to buy a house, you have to have a credit score of 600 or above. If it's below 600, it's very, very difficult for bill lenders to give you any sort of, you know, amount, any sort of, like, you know, mortgage. Is very, very difficult. So working on your credit is very important. In fact, a lot of the banks, they will tell you as it, like, you know, goes through. A lot of the banks require 680 or more. So if it's below the 680, you might get a good mortgage, but the interest rate might be higher. So your credit score is number one thing. In Canada, you have to work on your credit score. Like, make sure that it's like, you know, it's above the 680 range as much as possible. I'm just kind of summarizing. Work with professionals. Like I said, it's very important that you speak to a realtor early. The realtor will definitely give you guidance, will definitely help with the paperwork, will definitely negotiate and all of that for you. And, you know, definitely also, like, you know, kind of, like, you know, direct you regards to, okay, this is what I think you should do at this time, right? So there are no clashes. For instance, again, home inspections. A realtor will tell you it's important that you do home inspection on this house, even though everything now looks great, right? Sorry, I'm hearing myself. Okay. So a realtor will, like, you know, guide you in regards to, like, you know, some of the steps you should take, right? So it's very important that you should work with a realtor. Again, it's at no cost to you, quote and unquote, because the seller pays the realtor, not the buyer, right? And also working with a mortgage broker and starting early enough is very important. Because if, for instance, you go and meet the mortgage broker and they tell you you can't qualify until maybe in 6 months' time, he will start giving you some tips on working on that credit, right? Either, okay, start paying your credit card debts. That's one of them. That will help you, you know, pay off your credit, you know, decrease your expenses, different things like that. So start early, start early. I can't overemphasize the fact that it's important to start early. You know your costs and goals. It's more like what I ordered versus what I got. I can be swiping through like houses that are like 600,000 or maybe 800,000, and then I go to him and he's telling me, oh, you can only buy a house for 400,000. So what happens, right? So before you start house hunting, you want to know what you qualify for. It's different from Nigeria, where if I have, it's different from Ghana, where if I have like maybe 400,000 in my account, or maybe 500,000 in my account, I can just go and just buy any house I want. Here you actually need to be qualified, except you have the money to pay cash, which a lot of Canadians don't actually have the money to pay. to pay cash. A lot of Americans don't have the money to pay cash. Yeah, so home ownership is very, very possible. It's very, very achievable. I've seen newcomers coming to Canada, and in less than a year, they get a very beautiful house, a very beautiful investment, and from there they subsequently build and build and build. So I just want to encourage you that if you're a newcomer and you're looking to become a homeowner, it's very, very possible. It's very possible to achieve like that goal, especially here in Canada. It's a land of opportunities. You know, you don't have to wait to have 400,000 in order to buy a house in Canada. Having 5% of that, 20,000, you can definitely get that house, right? So taking on that opportunity where you don't actually have to have all the money, like you don't have to have all the 400,000 to buy a house. Because where I'm from, the system there is have all the money and then come. But in Canada, the system is totally different. So those are like key takeaways. And yeah, I think that's about it. Thank you so much. So we will go through some other stuff. Like he will go through like more in depth, and I will come back again for our draw, like the 1-5 draw as well. Thank you.
I think it's better to talk like this because you can't go back. You can't go back. So just press this. This one's
All right. Good afternoon, and thanks for being here. My name is Tunde Zakaria, and I was born and raised in Ghana. So some people here today, they wonder why you sound like a Ghanaian. But I was born in Ghana to a Nigerian father and a Ghanaian mother. So that's a little background about myself.
So you're Nigerian.
I was.
You're Nigerian.
I'm a Ghanaian by day and a Nigerian at night. So I was recently watching a podcast, and it's about the current war in the Middle East. And so one of the speakers was cautioning people about the imminent financial crisis. I tend to agree with them. And in the conversation, one person mentioned that despite all this, you see so many things on TikTok, YouTube, and everywhere. So be mindful of whom you listen to. And that really stuck with me. So every time I'm doing something like this, I want to give a background about myself so that you are aware the person you are listening to, and whatever I say, whether you take it serious or not, it will be up to you to make a decision. So it's okay for me to tell you a little about my background. I graduated in economics from Memorial University in 2020. Then I joined RBC Retail and Commercial Banking Division, worked for them for about almost 3 years. Then I left for TD. So since 2023 June, I've been with TD Bank, Retail and Commercial Banking Division. And this is what I've been doing. So what I'm coming to share with you today is something that I've been doing for close to 6 years. So you know that I have the background to share my perspective and knowledge with you. I'm also a graduate of economics, so when I give economic perspective, I'm giving you something that I have academic knowledge about. As I indicated, I've been doing this for close to 6 years, and I've done presentations like this across so many immigrant communities. And one thing that sticks with me every time I speak with immigrants is the fact that we all lack financial planning knowledge. Many a time we were told or taught something about budgeting. Almost everyone here probably knows about budget, but as to whether we stick to it is a different story. But the main problem is financial planning knowledge that we lack. And I'm saying this without any hesitation, that we don't have it. It's unfortunate where we were raised, that's the system there. Parents tend to rely on their children as their source of retirement. And in the system here, parents don't rely on their children as their source of pension. You build your own pension and you feed from your pension. If you rely on your children as a source of pension, you have a rude awakening, because they will live in the same community with you, but they will not pay your bills. Again, let me give you this knowledge. If you are working or you are a retired person today, and you are taking Government of Canada pension, what you are likely to get from CPP is $700. What you are likely to get from old age pension is $600. So the two combined, you are likely to get $1,300 every month. And ask yourself, is that enough to pay rent? Is that enough to pay mortgage? Most people work in industries where there's no employer pension. And for that reason, your pension is likely to be the two sources from federal government, which is CPP and ODS, Canada Pension and Old Age Security. You have nothing more. $13 in today's prices. I bet you, in the next 20 years, 30 years, that money is not going to change significantly, but cost of living is going to change dramatically. Cost of living, rent probably will be $3,000 for a basement in the next 20, 30 years. But CPP, OAS probably will be $2,000. So there will always be a shortfall. That is the gap that financial planning fills. So when I have a chance to speak with immigrants, and because it's an integral part of what we do in retail banking, I try to share some perspective with people so that you don't leave the room the same. I'm going to spend about 5 minutes to share with you tenets of financial planning. Unfortunately, all the major banks in Canada, they have a threshold before they capture you into their financial planning stream. In which case, the money they require probably maybe $250,000, $150,000, $500,000 for some banks. So you never have the chance to even speak with a financial planner in your life if you don't get that money. And the pillars of financial planning are the guiding tool that will prepare you for a successful retirement. Imagine you never get a chance to speak with a medical doctor when there's a problem that you are facing. And that is what I'm going to feel that this short time in my presentation slide. So what is financial planning? Financial planning is a comprehensive process or a paperwork that gives you guidance on how you structure your finances from the day you draw the plan until the day you die and beyond. This is very deep. Imagine you can put pen and paper down today and say that the work that I do, the way I live my life, the way I take care of my children, and how I want all things around me to be done is being drafted on a paper. And I'm going to be guided by this. And the money that I make per month and the money that I spend per month are all within that guideline, such that when you die, there will be no chaos. If you have 3 kids, each of them is getting this for university. If you have 4, this person is getting this for whatever they are doing. And everything will be guided by accordingly. You know that there will be no chaos when you die. You also know that the same document tells you how much you will get in pension. The same document tells you that if you have a house, probably it is paid off. Therefore, you didn't have a mortgage at that time. It also tells you that if you have property taxes that will be paid during that documentation, everything is well captured in the financial planning process. It gives you peace of mind even now when you draw it and you know that it's going to work. That is what financial planning tends to do. And in my slide, I've explained some tips that will give you guidance. This is not so comprehensive. If you have the resources, say 200,000, 500,000, and you speak with a financial planner in the bank, and things are structured for you, it will be more comprehensive. It will be more real. But if you don't have the means now, you can, by yourself, sit back and say, hey, these are the pillars that were mentioned as financial planning pillars. I can pick them individually and work on them. Even though now all I have in my account is 50,000, I will do things by myself, plan things well, and my finances will be well organized. Financial planning will help you to achieve your short and long-term goals. You will be able to manage your income and your investments. You are able to manage your debt. You are able to manage your assets and you plan well for retirement. These are essential tools that you need to gather now, because when you don't plan it, or no one plans it for you, your retirement will be chaotic. And that is the reason why you could see somebody who is 70 years but still standing at Walmart and doing a breathing job. Because if you didn't plan it well, all your pension will be 1,200, and likely your rent in basement is now 1,500 or 1,600. So how do you get money to supplement your income? And that is why somebody at 70 is still working. That's why somebody can still be working at 80. And that is the gap that this tool will fill. I'm going to touch on these 5 financial planning pillars. These are pillars that will hold, if you have it well organized, well structured, and you are going according to them, you will be very assured that your retirement will be guaranteed, provided there's life. Number 1 is tax planning. Tax planning. It is very essential. It is very key towards having a financial plan. There are people who wait till the end of the year, file their taxes, whether they owe CRA. If you are a student, the time you are in school, likely when you file taxes, CRA pays back to you. So you are in a glory mood. Every time it's time for taxes, you enjoy. When you begin working and you get into 6 figures, or you work and you also have a side job, or you have multiple streams of income, and you file your taxes, you end up paying back to Revenue Canada. And that's where you begin to think about, how do I pay less in taxes legitimately? How do I pay less in taxes? And that is what tax planning, efficient tax planning, gives you. And one of the tools for efficient tax planning is using tools like RSP or RRSP, real estate. And when I get to the mortgage slide, I'll explain how tax efficient you could use your mortgage to save on taxes. Another thing is risk management. It is non-negotiable to be in this country and not have insurance. It is non-negotiable. Whatever kind of insurance, whether it's a term insurance or whatever, I see term insurance to be least expensive, but there are other different kind of insurance that you must have to protect you in case you die tomorrow and you have children who are teenagers or whatever. How would your finances be? How do you plan to take care of them when you are not there? You may be the main pillar of the family. If you are not there today, who is going to pay the bills? I went to Toronto recently, and the number of people I saw fucked up on the street, especially blacks, gives me this indication that because of the lack of financial planning within the black community, when the breadwinner of the family dies, the children are left on the street. How many people here, or immigrants who come to Canada and have children who are in the same, age bracket, when they all enter university at the same time, how many families can finance that? Especially when you have children where the age gaps are very close, they are likely to be 2-3 children entering university at the same time. And University of Toronto now, per semester, some programs are like $20,000 per semester. How would parents be able to pay that? these are questions that you have to ask yourself. That okay, back in Nigeria, back in Ghana, if you went to university and there's close age gap, your parents can still pay. Your parents can still pay. Because some of us went to university when we were very close and it was manageable then. But here, at University of Toronto, most of their programs are around that number. So imagine you have 3 kids who want to go to university, and because of money, you say you cannot finance, or 1 or 2 people. We are going back to the dark days, where back then, some children will go to school for others to sit back at home. That is the story you're going to have here in Canada, because you just cannot afford. Even when you are alive. Then what happens when you are not? And life insurance or risk management fills that gap. So in a financial planning document, you must have a life insurance as part of the planning process. You must. And however you pay for it will be up to you. But you have to find a creative way to pay for it. That okay, if I pay $100 for my life insurance, I'm going for it. And it's not negotiable. You can't cancel it. You have to pay for it forever. If you go for a term life insurance, which I know banks have 25, 30 years, 40 years. If you are here and you are 25 years, if you go for a 40-year plan, it means that so far as you are alive for the next 40 years, you are covered. If nothing happens to you, you rather thank God that, well, you don't die. But if you die, your family will get some money. The younger you do it, the cheaper it is. So if you went in for a life insurance today and you are just 27, you are likely to be paying $40 for a term life insurance. It becomes more expensive when you go for whole life insurance because they are more comprehensive and they entail more. But that is very key. That is very important. And it is important to go for it when you don't have blood pressure, when you don't have diabetes. When you are below 30 years and you don't have any of these sicknesses, the insurance companies will approve you for a cheaper premium. When you cross to 30, 40, and you have some sleep apnea, whatever they call it, then okay, now your premium will become $500. You can't even afford it. If you have diabetes, it could be $1,000. If you have cancer, then you are not eligible. So these are some of the things that you look out for when you are younger that you want to get into. Another important thing is debt management. Debt management. Despite our intentions, things don't always go the way we want. We have people, car breaks down, you use credit card to buy things, something happens, you have to use credit card. How do you sit back, talk to the right person to manage the debt? It's very crucial to speak with the right person when you are in a situation where refinancing will be the right thing to do, you will advise. Where restructuring the debt will be the right for debt consolidation. Before people go into what we call bankruptcy, there are so many channels they could pass before bankruptcy becomes the last one. Most immigrants or most newcomers to Canada don't know anything about this. Don't know anything about this. So it's important for you to know these pillars, and then even if you don't have a resource to be with a bank financial planner, where the minimum requirement could be $150,000 or $250,000 or $500,000, at least if you have these two sets, you can begin to work them by yourself. And after today, if you are able to even do your own insurance, at least you feel one of the pillars of financial planning. Estate planning. Some people in the middle and upper middle class in Africa, yes, they do it. When they get to 50, 60, they begin to write their will. They begin to create a trust account if they have money, if you have resources. It's good to have a trust account, move all your assets into a trust, and name your children or your family people as your beneficiaries. That way, taxes are avoided, the family get to keep whatever, and you know it. We have it in Africa where the wealthy people, they create a trust, name it whatever, Abiola Trust, and everybody in that lineage who is Abiola can benefit from it. If the one wise person did it from the back, everybody benefits. And that is what estate planning does. The average person here knows about this. It takes about $300 or $400 to write a will. when you get to the stage where you are building some asset, and you think that, oh, I've reached a stage where at least I need to document my intentions on paper, that if I die today, there shouldn't be chaos. Everybody should get what they are due. You write a will and things are fine. It can always be changed. Yes, sir.
So assuming you want to buy a house, maybe your first home, can you put it in the trust?
Yes and no. Yes, in the sense that if you are buying a house and your intention is to buy it cash, $500,000, you have it, or you are paying more than 20%, then you can have the property registered in a business name, right? Now, if the goal is to pay 5%, it is intended to be what? A primary residence. Therefore, there's what we call default insurance and all those things that protects the banks. Then the property must be in your name. It must be in your personal name.
So what qualifies me to make the property not in my name?
In your name, you must pay 20% or more. In some instances, it has to be 25%. So these are the tools that will guide you. And I purposefully left retirement planning as the last one. Where in Canada, they have, it's in Canada, it's in US, it's in most advanced country, what we call RSP. They call it 401k. We have tax-free savings, they also have tax-free savings. There are other registered investments, but these are the ones that are really pertinent to retirement. RSP, where every money you contribute into your RSP becomes tax deductible. So if your income is 100,000 and you put 10,000 in your RSP, for tax purposes, your income actually was 90,000, which means you'll be taxed on 90,000. I don't know if I'm making sense, but those in the income bracket where they actually pay to CRA, this is what you can do every single year to build your retirement account. So sometimes you simulate your taxes. When you simulate, you realize that I'm going to pay 6,000 to CRA, but if I put 10,000 into my RSP investment, I'll pay 0 to CRA. It is prudent to do that. And if every single year you do this, in the next 20 years, just by yourself, you would have contributed 200,000. That money is likely to be invested, which could double in the 20 years. So you have 400,000 overall. I'm just saying numbers, but it could be more. If you do stocks or you do ETFs with a fund, it could grow astronomically. In today's economy, people are even doing, how do you call it? Real estate with their RSP. Right? So there are so many investments that you could do with this. Then tax-free savings. When you invest your money, if you have 100,000 today and you want to invest, and let's say you do the investment and you make 10,000 on top of your money, technically you have to pay tax on it. Because every dollar you make, whatever investment, you have to pay tax. When the money is invested in tax-free, it is tax-free. It means you don't pay tax on it. There's a limit to how much you can contribute in your tax-free every year. And if you're a newcomer, it comes from the year you entered Canada. So if you check in your MyCRA account, you know your limit. If you know your limit, your goal as a newcomer is to begin to work towards maxing it. Whatever means you do, every year you contribute something into it, you are growing it. You are growing it. And by the time you retire, if you have taken care of all your children, you have this money as your pension fund. So that if CPP, if government pension is 1,002, you can also take 2,000 from your pension. And a pillar in retirement planning is real estate. I purposefully left it for the last because it fits into the conversation about our mortgage. Real estate investment. It is the #1 game changer. It is the creme de la creme. It is a gold standard in Canada. If you don't get into the real estate space, by the time you retire, your rent could be $5,000. If you buy today and your mortgage is $3,000 and it's a 2-unit house, you are likely to pay $1,500 for a mortgage because the tenant in the basement will also pay half of it. And the good news is that you are going to pay that $1,500 for the foreseeable future. It is not going to change dramatically. But if you don't, by the time rent goes up, you pay the rent, the future rent price. So this is the game changer. And eventually the mortgage will be paid off. If you choose to go back to your country, you can sell the property and go. When you sell your primary residence, you don't pay tax on it. And that's where people move about. So you see somebody buying one, after 5 years it moves, it gets equity of 200,000, use 50,000 to buy a new one. 150,000 invested, buys a new one. After some years, the only thing you're creating is that your children will not get to grow around their best friends. But at the end of the day, you're also securing their future, because some of my friends who were my closest friends from age 10 are no longer my friends now. And we keep moving. If I move from this province to a new province, I'm going to make new friends. And it keeps changing every time. So they shouldn't worry that much about that. The most important thing is their post-secondary education, where currently up to secondary education is free. But when it gets to post-secondary, which is more expensive, that's where you have to pay. And that can be an investment towards their post-secondary education. It is very important. And for you to be present here means that you already take real estate as an important investment in your portfolio. And for that reason, you took time off work to be present here today. And this is going to feed into our presentation about a mortgage. So what is a mortgage? What is a mortgage? Probably we know, but for the purpose of this presentation, I'm going to explain what it is. A mortgage is a loan from a bank to buy a secured property. So if you borrow money from a bank to buy a land where you've spread it over a period of time, it's a mortgage. In Canada, when you buy a property, the banks will spread it over a period of 25 to 30 years, depending on whether you're a first-time buyer or you are buying a brand new. At that point, it can be your choice whether to choose 25 years or 30 years if you are a first-timer. You can choose 20 years if you want to pay in 20 years, just that the lower years you choose, the higher your payment will be. And as I indicated, there's always what? A secure property, a landed property, a property that cannot move. So if you buy a kiosk and you want a mortgage on it, it's not possible, because it should be something that is not movable. I've seen houses that can be moved. You know, those movable things that they are selling now, you can't get a mortgage on it because it must be immovable. So a land or a house works in that category. Now, when you get a mortgage, the bank is going to spread your payment over 25, 30 years, but you are going to decide whether you want to pay them monthly or bi-weekly or semi-monthly or weekly or whatever. Those ones are your choice. You tell the bank, I want to pay monthly. For me, I prefer monthly because it gives you enough spacing between the current payment and the next payment. Even if you don't have money, at least you have enough time to worry, and then if you have land in Nigeria and you want to sell, you sell it, but within 1 month, the money will be here, and then you can pay your mortgage. But it gives you enough spacing. Some people prefer it bi-weekly because it aligns with their paycheck. However you want it is your choice. It makes no difference. The only time it makes a difference is if you choose bi-weekly and you select rapid. The bank increases your payment slightly, and the extra money goes to the principal to lower your interest. But we'll get to that. Every period that you make a mortgage payment, part of the money goes to the interest and part goes to the principal. So when you borrow money from the bank and they spread it over 30 years, they expect that every month that you are paying, some of the money you pay goes to interest and some goes to the principal. So over the 30-year life of the mortgage, you are done paying the mortgage. Until recently, all the big banks were including property tax in a mortgage. Now they've all stopped. Only lenders, and I know they will all stop very soon because it creates something in the background which is not so friendly. They create an escrow account, take your property tax, and then they will pay in the following year. Every year, it accrues interest because they delay the payment. So it was becoming more chaotic, and then the banks stopped. Now, why would you use a mortgage? Of course, not everybody will have 500,000 or 600,000, 1 million to buy cash. Therefore, it makes sense to use a mortgage from a bank. And from investment perspective, it's even more prudent to use a mortgage even when you have the money. The reason being that mortgage is the cheapest loan you can ever get. Just think about it. If you were doing business in Nigeria and you ever went to a bank for a loan, what was the interest? Likely to be a double-digit loan. Could be 20%, could be 25%. We've experienced it. So mortgage is always the cheapest. Even here, if you want a loan for a car, you are not going to get 4%. It's likely to be 6-7%. If you want a loan for a line of credit, it's going to be about 7%. Therefore, if you have money now, why would I throw it into a mortgage? Then later in life, when situations happen, you go back to the same loan to go and borrow at 7%. It is prudent to invest your money. And if you understand investment, keeping a mortgage at 4% and investing your money in the ETF will give you flat 10%. Because historically, the S&P has performed 10% on average. And therefore, if I don't know anything at all, I would rather take a bank loan at 4% and invest my money at 10%. What it gives me is a 6 percentage point difference work free. Therefore, when I talk to people, people come to me and ask me, is it prudent to pay on top of my mortgage? I want to finish paying quickly. Where are you rushing to? Because you could invest that money as well in something that would give you more benefit than the 4% you may be paying. Take it differently. Cash is king. And if you know this story, it is everything. Cash is king. Credit is queen. And therefore, if I have cash and I go and lock it in the bank, I just go and lock it in the bank. When it's time for you to go back and take it, it becomes like a tug of war. Your own money, you've paid down. But when you want to go and take it, you have to bring documents. Why then would I throw money into a mortgage? When you get a mortgage, normally when I'm talking to people who are second buyers and third buyers, it makes more sense. Because for them, they've been contemplating that idea. I have 20,000, should I go and pay onto my mortgage? And my perspective has always been no. Because unless my mortgage interest is 8%, then I know that, okay, risking an investment for 10%, I'd rather pay on a mortgage. But 4% is one of the cheapest you get. Again, why would you use a mortgage? It's because of the concept of leverage. Every wealthy person in the world is using leverage. Even Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, chose not to use cash to buy Twitter. He chose to borrow money. It should tell you something. When he had a cash, he could have bought it, but he chose to borrow. Simple analysis. When he borrowed the money from the bank, the interest cost is going to be tax deductible for his business. So whatever interest they charge him, he will deduct it as an expense to the business. Again, if he had used 40 billion to buy Twitter, 40 billion that he could have invested in a different company, is giving it to the bank, or he's giving it to the seller of Twitter. It makes no economic sense because he's an investor and he's investing in so many different projects. Why would I pay 40 billion cash? Then I pay cash. Now every profit that my business makes, government will tax it. But so far as he bought it with debt, it's going to make less profit because the entire cost of borrowing the 40 billion becomes expense for his business. And that's how we are supposed to manage our personal lives. We have to carry our personal life like a business, where we can deduct enough taxes, where we can leverage, where we can do every single thing that a business does with our personal life. So we run our personal income tax like a business tax because the businesses have all the deductions. And the final reason is long-term wealth creation. It's non-negotiable that if you have two properties where you live and a rental, and you bought them almost at the same time, by the time you finish paying them, one becomes a free rental for you. Assuming in today's prices, nothing changes, but the rent for a 2-unit house is $4,000, and you retire, and you don't have anything, you will be taking $4,000 from a tenant, work free. I think this is something that is, I just don't know. It's not easy, it's not difficult to explain. It's not difficult to explain. Imagine you have two properties where you live. You bought them at the same space. And therefore, in the next 25 years, you are done paying both. Let's assume, for simplicity, rent doesn't go up. In today's prices, rent is about 4,000 if you have 2-unit house in Kenya. The basement is 1,500, the top is 2,500. That's $4,000. If you are done paying everything, you are taking 4,000 cash. If that is all you are receiving in retirement, let's say there's no CPP, there's no government pension, you'll be fine. Because where you live is also paid off. You'll be fine. But trust me, rent is not going to be the same. Because I remember when we came to school here, in 2018, rent in a basement was $800. Some landlord will give you internet. If you are lucky, they will even give you electricity. Today is double the price. So things are changing very fast. Now, mortgage qualification basics. There are 3 main things that we look out for when we are processing a mortgage. 3 main things. Every other thing that we look out for in a mortgage process is just an addendum. It's just an addition to requirements. These are the main things. Number 1 is your credit score or your credit bureau. Now, when we work on credit applications in the bank, our main focus is not the score. Our main focus is not the score. Our main focus is your history of payment and how diligent you are with your debt. That is our main focus. The number only becomes necessary when you are getting close to 600. But if your score is 700, 720, 740, nothing much to worry about the score. We want to see the history of your payment and how responsible you are with debt. Because you are going to commit to a big project. How will you pay your credit card of 5,000 now that you want a debt of 600,000? So we want to see that history of payment, that this person, we trusted them with 5,000 credit card, they were diligent. Now we are confident enough to give you 500,000. We are confident to give you 700,000. That is what we look out for in your credit history. So we want to see the payment. And one thing that surprises me, therefore I always say it in my presentations to newcomers, there are newcomers who don't know that when they go to RBC, their TD credit card will show. They don't know that we see. There are newcomers who don't know that their telephone bill is part of their credit history. There are newcomers who don't know that if they miss one payment, it's going to impact their credit score. And therefore, every time I meet newcomers and I'm explaining things around credit, I touch on all these things because everybody must know. There were people who grew up here, and therefore, when they were growing up, they went to their grandmother, and the grandmother said, "Hey, be mindful, always watch your credit score." We didn't grow up here like that. Our grandparents may not be here, and therefore, we don't have that advantage. The only time we get to know some of these things is when we speak with somebody at the bank. Or if we read, and even when you go into your online banking details and you read about credit bureau and how to learn more about credit bureau, it gives you all those things. So credit is queen, and therefore you have to cherish it. You have to hold it with absolute tenacity. If you mess up your credit in this country, trust me, you will live in this country, but with a Nigeria mentality, with a Ghanaian mentality, because you have to get cash to buy everything. You have to get cash of 50,000 to buy a car, cash of 500,000 to buy a house. Every single thing you have to pay with cash, and therefore credit becomes very instrumental in our life here because it's built as a credit system. The next one is income. Income. You can't be unemployed and go to the bank that you have a down payment, you want to get a mortgage. It's not possible. You must be employed and be making income. It could be self-employment or it could be working for someone. When you are self-employed, it becomes more complicated because at the outset, you need 2 years of reported income. So if you are self-employed here, you have to be thinking about it. If your goal is to enter the real estate space, know that you need 2 years of reported income, and then we can work with you. Many a time, self-employed people also are able to reduce their income because they employ themselves, they want to pay themselves less, then they can pay less tax. But at the end of the day, the impact will show when you're applying for something like a mortgage. So its income is really key. Again, with income, if you are a part-time worker, if you are part-time or casual, in fact, if you are not a full-time employee, it becomes tricky when you are applying for things like a mortgage. You need about 2 years of work history to be qualified for a mortgage or any credit. Under exceptional circumstances, if you are part-time and your employer says you have a guaranteed income, say every week you do 30 hours and your employer, can prove that you have a guarantee on paper, then it could be considered. But the key here is that you need a full-time job. You need a full-time job to qualify. Number 3 is the down payment. FOC mentioned about the down payment, and it's not possible to finance a mortgage here in Canada 100% by the bank. It's not possible because the government says that you must have your skin in the game. So you must commit some level of money, and the minimum required in Canada is 5%. In US, it could be 3%, but in Canada, 5%. The good news is that in Newfoundland, there's a government program which is still ongoing, where someone who doesn't have the money and reported an income of less than $85,000 in the previous tax year could borrow from the provincial government, use the money as a source of a down payment. The only condition is that the property you are buying, depending on the location, must be less than about $380,000 or $385,000. So that's a tricky one there, because $380,000 in St. John's now, I don't know what kind of house it will be. Likely to be a single family house and not investment prudent. But if you have a family that you are paying rent of $2,500 or $2,000, it might make sense to go for it, because your rent will be replaced by a mortgage, literally, because you pay almost the same amount for mortgage. That is the only caveat there, but you need a down payment. The down payment must be from your personal resources. It could come from a relative as a gift. It could come from a relative as a gift. The lenders wouldn't scrutinize much who a relative is, and therefore we've seen people bring gift letter from purported siblings, but it's not my job to go and investigate who a sibling is. Therefore, the story always ends there. But it's a gift coming from a sibling. So that's one of the ways that you can get your down payment, a gift from a sibling. Now, when the money is coming from your personal resources, we check for 90-day history to make sure that you save it, and it is purposefully for anti-money laundering stuff. So we check 90-day history to see where the money is coming from. So if your intention is to buy a house, as purposely indicated, 3 to 6 months down the road, you begin to prep yourself. If you have a down payment, you organize it well. If you have, you can keep some in your RSP, maximize your RSP. There's also something we call FHSA, First Home Savings Account. You can create one, have some of your savings in there. When you have excess, you keep it in your tax-free savings. So by the time you are ready, all these monies will be well organized, and the 90-day history will depict that the money is coming from your investments, and you'll be fine. But if the money is scattered, you have 10,000 with a friend who is in school in Toronto, he will be sending it to you on closing day, it becomes more chaotic, and you don't want that. So just be mindful that the 90-day history is key. You have to keep your money in your investment for 90 days. If for some reason the money is coming from Nigeria or Switzerland or Indonesia, you have to make sure the money is here at least 1 month before. If you are a newcomer, they only give that exception to newcomers because the understanding is that the person traveled here, and because of international restrictions, you can't carry certain amount of money on you. So when you arrive, you have to transfer the money to the Canadian economy. And by doing so, they give us that caveat that if you're a newcomer, they can allow you up to 31 days. So by the 31 days, the money must be in Canada. And then you can proceed with your mortgage. Again, I also mentioned about the 680 credit score. 680 is just a friendly score that if your beacon score is 680, you are assured it will be approved. But there's no guarantee. In fact, for TD, RBC, where I've worked, and TD, where I still work, if you are below 600, you can't get a mortgage. You can't get a mortgage. The only thing you could do if you have a relative here who is not planning to do or who doesn't have a credit situation that will deteriorate your credit circumstance, you could bring the person over as a co-signer. So the person is more or less coming to guarantee for you. So if you have a relative here who has a good standing themselves and they are willing to guarantee for you, then you can bring the person over to come and guarantee for you. It can be a co-signer or a guarantor in that regard. My key advice to anybody preparing for this is to work towards 700 and over. That way you are safe. And it's so easy to do that. If you have something, sometimes people already have things in collection that is weakening their score. There are ways to, if you can justify the reason for the collection, there are steps you could take to get those collection stuff removed. And it is prudent to do that early enough to get those things removed before it is time for a mortgage. So we've touched on the credit score, and as a key takeaway, we all live here knowing very well that we should work with 700 and over. Just see 700. If you see 690, work towards it. Speak with somebody that you trust knows it, or go to your bank, speak with an advisor, and know the steps that you can do to jump into the 700. When you get into the 700, you want to be comfortable, that is fine. But always remember, you should be in the 700. Because sometimes what you see in your online score may not be what the bank sees at the end. So you might see 700 and the bank says, no, it's 600. Because what is reported across the banks in your online banking space is TransUnion score. But Equifax score tends to be slightly different. And that's a reason why sometimes you might see your TD score slightly different from maybe RBC or Scotiabank or BMO. So work towards that. If you have just one credit card, that may be a reason why your score may not be moving up. So getting a second may be prudent. If you have a phone payment, it is okay to put it on a credit card such that every month the bank takes from the telecommunication company takes the money from your credit card and then you pay the credit card later. It saves you, because if you choose to pay the bill every month, chances are that you may forget, and that could affect you. If you miss one, your score drops. So it is the safest thing to do is to have all the recurring payments onto a credit card that you are comfortable with. That credit card is your primary bank. So you log in at the end of the period and then you pay. You are building your credit score and you are also getting credit card points. I think it's no brainer. And if you don't do that, I think you should. It's one of the smartest ways to boost your credit score. All recurring payments should go through the credit card.
Excuse me, but this recently some insurance companies usually want to go for your checking account instead of your credit card.
Yes, and there's a reason why they do that. You know, if you know how credit card companies make money, you will understand. So every time you buy something at Walmart for $100 and you pay with credit card, Visa might get $2 out of that money. So every time you pay with a credit card, Visa gets something small from Walmart, not you.
Okay.
So if I'm an insurance company and most of my people are using credit card as a source of payment, by the end of the year, you realize that about 2% of the money will go. So because insurance is more or less non-negotiable, they can be definite and say that, hey, we don't want credit card again. And some insurance companies do that already. When people start like small store, it's also difficult for them to take credit card because you look at the percentage that is going to these companies. Sometimes it's 3%. Some is 4 or 5%. So somebody buys something for $100, then you have to pay $5 to a company that is just providing the medium. But in the background, of course, they themselves can also include that cost in your insurance premium and quietly allow you to use credit card, if you know what I mean. So if your premium is supposed to be 200, we'll make it 205, and then pay the $5 to the credit card company. But that said, this is the reason why they would sometimes decline credit card and ask you to use a debit account. And I did say something about this earlier, where the employment should be full-time. So if you work for a company where, I have seen this for persons working for care companies, where the arrangement is that the person is clearly doing 40 hours a week, but the employment arrangement is still part-time. So if you bring your document, we can see that you consistently do 40 hours. We can see, but your employer says you are part-time. And for that reason, we can't qualify you based on full-time income. So if you are doing part-time, you must have 2-year history with the same company. If you are in school and you are working for the same company, and you've been working for the same company for some time, it is prudent to stay with the company when you finish school, even after you get a full-time job. Because that part-time income can be a supporting income for you. So somebody is in school working for 24 hours for Key Asset or whatever company, and then they finish school, they get a job with Verafin. Verafin is paying them $90,000. In today's market, 90,000 may not give you the property you may be looking for. But the 2-year history from Key Asset, which is maybe 25,000, if we strike it, that makes your income 115,000. If we do our analysis, it will place you in a better position. So if you are a student and you are here, know that this is one trait that you can carry on. That wherever you work, stick with them when you finish school and you even find a full-time job. And you can do the secondary job, keep to it until you finalize some of these things. It is a smart move. If not, trust me, it's becoming increasingly difficult for people to qualify. If your work is a contract job, let's say you are employed that says contract that ends 2027 June. If you want to get a mortgage, you must make sure that you have at least 6 months remaining in your contract term. It is very important because if you have 5 years, the lender is not so assured whether your contract will be renewed or not, which means that you get a mortgage, 3 or 4 months, you could be laid off. And that is a tricky one. So as a guide for the banks and for them to be a bit protective and cover their money, they want at least 6 months on a contract. I did say this earlier, if you are buying a second home and you are buying brand new, you could still do 30 years. And this is a guide I use normally, 4.6 of your income. And it is tricky. What constitutes an income? What constitutes an income? Because you file your taxes, you think you make 100,000 from work. But the bank did your qualification, they say you make 90,000. Because what constitutes an income to you may not be an income to the bank. Because somebody is doing 3 jobs. One is a casual one, the bank may not include. The bank will include maybe just your full-time job or a full-time and a part-time that has consistent average. So if I say 4.6 times your income, what am I saying? If you make $100,000 and you are buying a single-family house, you can probably buy about $460,000 in today's market. at today's interest rate. If you are buying 2 units, because it's a 2 unit, it's assumed that you stay in 1 unit and rent the other unit. So the rent from the other unit becomes a supporting income for you, and that will change again for you if the property is a 2 unit. And by 2 units, I'm referring to a house with a basement, separate for renting, not a in-law apartment, but a separate basement apartment. We can use the rent, or we use the rent from the basement to qualify you. In a very rare circumstances, it could be arranged as you are staying in the basement and renting the top. If you are single and the basement is 2 units and the top is 3 units, that could be argued that, okay, you stay in the basement and rent the top. It will be approved. Down payment requirements. I did say something about this earlier. Where 5% down, minimum 5% down, and then when you pay 5% or anything below 20%, you are required to pay something we call default insurance. Default insurance. Now that default insurance, you don't pay out of pocket. It is included in the mortgage that you pay per month, so you don't see it. But anybody who pays 20% will bypass that default insurance. It's an insurance for the bank that is giving you the money, that if you don't pay, the bank will go to the insurance company, take their money from the insurance, and the insurance company will deal with you. So the minimum down payment, 5%, if you choose and you have the resources and you go 20%, you avoid default insurance. And default insurance is about 4% of your mortgage balance. So if you are buying a property where the mortgage is 400,000, your default insurance is likely to be around 4%, which is 16,000. And that 16,000 will be added to the 400,000, making it 416,000. That will be spread over the 30 years or 25 years for you. So you don't really see it because 16,000 over 25 years is really minute. So that is the numbers that go on in the background. And in calculating your down payment, when we calculate the down payment, which the minimum is 5%, we also calculate 1.5% as a closing cost. Now that 1.5% is just an estimate. So on the D-day of closing, it might change slightly, whether in your favor or in your disfavor. So 1.5% of 400,000 is about 6,000. So if your 400,000 property, your down payment of 5% will bring you to about 20,000. Closing cost 1.5%, 6,000, that is 26,000. So roughly this is how much you need to close on a 400,000 property. Now down payment could also come from a government source, as we indicated. Nova Scotia has it, Newfoundland has it. And in Newfoundland, every province has their own guide. And in Newfoundland, the requirement is that the previous year, if you are a couple, your joint income must not exceed 85,000. Your joint income. So if you are single and your income is 80,000, you qualify. But if you are a couple and one makes 51, the other makes 45, 95,000, you may be approved on a sliding scale. And the sliding scale means that, okay, if the maximum qualification is 380, based on the fact that your income went up by 10,000, they will slide you down a bit from 380 to about 350. It's a bit tricky, but if you need more information on that, I can share with you. But the trick is that your previous year income, if you apply this year, 2025 income for the family must not be more than 85,000 to get a provincial government approval. You need a pre-approval letter from a bank or a lender. And once you present it to the government of Newfoundland, within 1 week, they will send you the approval letter. The good news is that you don't need a PR, you don't need citizenship. You can be on a work permit and get it approved. Now, how to organize your down payment? I did mention these ones earlier. FHSE, First Home Savings Account. This is one of the game changers for most people because every single year you can deposit 8,000 into it, and that is tax deductible. Your RSP, you can contribute money into your RSP, go back and take it towards your down payment. However, with RSP, when you deposit money into your RSP and you want to go back and take it, the money must have been there for at least 90 days. So if you are buying a property in May and you deposit money into RSP today, you can't go back and take it as part of the home buyer's plan. You can't do it. So that is the one thing that you must know about RSP. If you intend to put money into RSP and use it as part of your down payment, the money must go into the RSP well over 90 days before you can use it as part of your down payment. Tax-free savings is also a way to organize your money. And if you are putting the money in stocks or ETFs or whatever, bond, if you keep it in the tax-free savings over a period of time, whatever growth you see on your money belongs to you. And all these things organizes your money without having to present your bank statement to the bank, right? Based on my credit experience, I don't like presenting my bank account to a bank. I don't. And I know people who bring their statement to us and they try to delete some things or they cover them because they don't want us to see everything they buy. Right? Imagine someone you go to church with and you see that the person buys weed every 2 weeks or every you understand? So not everybody wants to share everything. Not everybody wants to share everything, right? So at the end of the day, if you present your statement to the bank and you even have someone you are paying that is even suspicious, the bank can base on that and say, hey, where you are sending this money, we can't even do business with you. So it is just okay to have your down payment well organized in this investment, because this investment, you don't intermingle money with anybody. Right? You don't intermingle money with anybody. Any money going to this account and coming out of this account is you. Nobody can do e-transfer into this account. Nobody can do e-transfer out of it. And because your intention is to grow your money just for down payment, you'll be well intentioned about it and just dropping money into it. So everything there is likely to be what? Deposit. And if you build it well over 90 days, you are fine. And you make our work easier, right? Because if you present that document to me and everything that went in was well over 90 days, I just look at the history and there's nothing to crisscross. But there are instances where people bring their down payment and it's coming from their checking account and the same checking. So we have to what? Go through the checking and see all the mysterious transactions that a person has been doing, and we question, wow, people are doing all these things in Canada. And people are saying, and some people realize that every day they send money back home. Every day, wow. So you see all these things. So if you don't want the banker to see everything, you organize your down payment in a very clean way. And these are the tools that you can use. If it's coming from the government, as we indicate, the government will give you just a letter, and the closing day, they will give the check to the lawyer. So everything becomes clean. If you're also taking the money from the government, the closing cost must come from you, which is 1.5% of the purchase price. So on a 400,000 house, it becomes 6,000. And what is the closing cost? What is the closing cost? So it covers things like how much the lawyer is charging for their work they are doing. When you also buy a house, he's going to register the title in your name. He's going to do the sale in your name. And if the person you are buying the house from has paid part of the property tax for the year, they will do the adjustment and then pay the difference back to the person, and then the difference goes. So that is all captured in what we call the closing cost. And the 1.5 is an estimate. So if we say 6,000, it could be 5,000 on the DD or it could be 7,000. But just know that for paperwork, the bank calculates as 1.5%. And then once all this is done, we work in the background, we get you a pre-approval right from the outset that, hey, it's roughly telling you how much you can qualify for. How much you can qualify for, assuming your situation remains the same. But not after you come to the bank, you get a pre-approval, and you go and buy a car. Then you buy the car, you also begin to deplete your down payment. Then you max your credit card. No. Once you do that, your pre-approval is nullified, because the pre-approval, one of the conditions is that your income situation, your employment situation, and everything must remain as is. So the bank does a pre-approval. It's just a pre-paperwork to say that you work here, this is how much you make per year. And for that reason, based on the information you've shared with us, we are confident that you'll be approved for 600,000. We give it to you, and then you give it to the realtor. The realtor receives it based on that strong indication from the bank, then they can begin to search a house in that range for you. Then the realtor, after getting the house you're looking for, the realtor will then bring an agreement to the bank that, hey, you gave my client a pre-approval, and based on that, they've gone for this house, so now we want finance. So the difference between a finance and a pre-approval is the fact that finance is coming with an address of the house you are looking to buy. It's coming with an address. Now there's an address you are looking for to buy. But pre-approval, there's no address. It's just a pre-qualification to determine where you stand. And you can look for your house anywhere. Once you find it, we go into what we call finance. And the finance, at that time, you have an address you are looking to buy. Now, these are more nitty-gritties of a mortgage. Amortization. You hear it a lot. Amortization is how long you are doing the mortgage for. Say 25 years or 30 years. That is amortization. Then another thing you hear is interest rate. When you get a mortgage in Canada, the interest rate that you are given is not fixed for the whole 30 years. You are going to decide whether you want to go with 3 years or 5 years. And even that, you can choose variable or fixed. If you choose a fixed rate, your rate is locked for that period you chose. So if you chose 3 years, your rate will be locked for 3 years. If you choose 5, the same for that period. If you choose a variable rate, as the economy goes up and down, when Trump makes noise and prime rate goes up, your rate will go up. If rate goes down, your rate will go down. So it's more volatile in that situation if you go for variable rate. So most people who are not economic watchers, they just want to go for a fixed rate. And when you choose a 5-year fix, it means that every 5 years you go to the bank and renegotiate your rate. Mortgage stress testing. I think it may be too technical for first-time buyers, but what it does is that the banks in the background calculate something to determine that, okay, if we are giving you 4% interest, we have to, let's put 2% more on top to determine this person's ability to afford a mortgage if the economy deteriorates and rates go to 6%. So stress testing is more or less the bank doing their own paperwork to see if in a worst case scenario, where can this person stand? So in our qualification that we do, although your rate may be 4%, we stress test you at 6%. If your rate is 3%, we'll stress test you at 5.25, because the minimum threshold is 5.25 for stress testing. We've mentioned down payments, closing costs, mortgage insurance, property taxes, and home insurance. So mortgage insurance, and here I'm referring to when you hear mortgage, when you start a mortgage process, you hear 3 insurances. 3. One is the default insurance, which I mentioned earlier, where if you are paying less than 20%, you are required to buy insurance on top of your mortgage. Then we have mortgage protection insurance. That one is more or less if you were to die or if you were to experience a critical illness, who is going to pay the mortgage? So insurance comes in to cover you if you were to die, or if you were to have a cancer or any life-threatening sickness, the insurance will pay the mortgage. Then the last one is home insurance, where you are required to have fire insurance. They used to call it fire insurance because mainly it is fire that this protects. When the house burns, insurance company will pay for it. And advantages of getting a mortgage. 1, you build equity over time, potential tax reduction, the pride of ownership, and long-term financial growth. Conclusion. I've always said this: cash is king, and credit is queen. You don't wait to buy real estate. You buy real estate and wait. And people here who bought houses in 2020 can attest. Bought houses at 330, 350, 320. Now it's 550, 600. Sitting on 300,000 worth of equity. And people bought 2, you can imagine, 600. People 3. People are sitting on $1 million equity. Right? Someone came to school 2017, 2018, sitting on $1 million equity. So that is the trick for real estate. These are the benefits it brings to all of us. And as newcomers, it is conclusive. We can't get it wrong. It is pride for us. Thank you.
what do you suggest is an ideal amortization year for a first-time buyer or second time? 20, 25, 30 years. Which would you advise to be out?
My answer will be the maximum amortization. The maximum amortization. You know why? If your goal is to build a real estate portfolio and continue to buy as and when you qualify and as and when you buy, you always want to have the least mortgage payment at any time possible. And if you choose a 25-year compared to 30-year, you know that the payment will be lower for the 30 years. And therefore, my current mortgage will be lower. And therefore, when I buy another one, they know that, oh, my current mortgage is too for it. So my ability to buy the new one will be there. You get a point? So this is non-negotiable. Unless somebody who thinks, no, I'm not going to real estate business. I'm buying a house, I'll stay there. I'm 30 years, the next 25 years, I'm done with work. I don't want to carry mortgage in retirement. I want to have 25 years. Fair enough. But somebody who wants to build a real estate portfolio, you always want to have the least payment on anything you do. The least. So even when you're buying a car, you can go for the maximum amortization they will allow you, so that your monthly payment will be low. The goal is to buy more, build equity on several properties, than to buy one and pay down fast. Yes, people did this. Imagine two friends. One person bought and said, okay, I'll stay there. 2020, bought it for 350,000. Today, 600. Despite the fact that they paid down, the capital gain is also 250,000. But let's talk about the capital gain. Then the second person bought the first one, squeezed himself, bought the second one. Now that second person has equity built in two properties, 250, 250. If you went third, you can imagine that people can begin to retire and have their own business and travel and do whatever they want to do. But if the goal is to build more, yes, I will always have the minimum monthly payment on anything. Minimum payment. Yeah. Any more questions?
Thank you.
But the longer the payments, the more money the bank makes from you.
Okay. Let me tell you this.
True.
That is true. But if you're a business person and you look at the bank side only, right, you will not win. Because mine is a win-win. I know the bank is in the business to win. You're also in, like I indicated before, if we organize our personal life like a business, we're also in the business to win. A mortgage is the cheapest loan ever you can get. If I went for a 4% loan, I'm never concerned about interest. However the bank wins, I don't care, because I know that I've won by getting a 4% loan. Whatever I do with my money is to me, because if I have multiples, the equity I would have built in 5 years is more than what a bank is getting. So if my bank can qualify me, trust me, I can buy every single one. If everybody in St. John said they don't want it, the government should give it to me. I'll manage everybody as a tenant. And in US, there are people like that. Robert Kiyosaki's are actually landlords for almost everybody in New York. Because people were trying, I don't buy multi-unit. He will buy the whole apartment and rent to everybody. And because he has rented to everybody and you don't have nowhere to go, if he increases your rent from 4,000 to 4,500, you will stay there. You have nowhere to go because it makes more sense proximity-wise to stay in downtown in New York than to live, because if you live and you travel, there will be nowhere to park, and you're going to park and pay 1,000 and too much trouble. So because of that, you stay there. Now that you are staying there, there are no new houses coming up. So it's increasing your rent from 4,000 to 4,500. You can't move because you do the economic analysis. Well, even if you move and you drive to work, you pay 1,000 for parking. So what was the sense in it? So back to your question, bank is making more, but you are making more than a bank. If you look at it from that strand, where you've organized your personal finances as a business, that hey, the equity you've built, you can actually borrow the equity back from the bank and start a business. If you do some import business and you need 300,000, you have it in your house. And that could give you 20%, 50% a year. So if you are making 50% and the bank that gave you the money is making 4%, don't be worried about the bank, because I have to be paid.
Any more questions?
No questions. I know there are questions. There are questions.
Please feel free to ask questions. That's why we are here.
So for the first time home buyer, you said that like you have to get like a single house.
Is it a government program you're talking
Yeah.
about? Okay, go on.
So what if you want like the double, is it double?
2 units.
Yeah, the 2 unit, and you want to add money to it, is it possible? Why using the government?
No, it's not possible. It's not possible. Yeah, and we didn't say that you have to buy a single family. What I was saying is that in today's market, if you carry 380,000, right, it is likely that the 2 units you get is dilapidated. In which case you buy 380 and you have to use 200,000 to renovate. Right? So that's the reason why I'm saying that 380 in today's market, to buy 2 units, you know what you are buying.
Got one question. If someone is pre-approved for, let's say, $500,000 and he acquires a property, is there a possibility for the person to be pre-approved for another property or higher than $500,000?
Yes. Yes.
What are the factors that?
So the factors are that the moment you buy the first one, right? If you are buying the second one, and it's also 2 units, now the first one becomes a full rent for you in the qualification process. I don't know if I'm making sense, but so let me use numbers. You bought a 2 unit, you were qualified at 500,000. Now you are buying a new one. In St. John's now, we will use 4,000 to qualify you for your first house, and then 1,500 to qualify you for the basement of the new one. So that is giving you 5,500 new income. If the existing house, which you bought for 500, the monthly mortgage payment should be around 2.5. If that is 2.5, property tax should be around 380, 400. So the cost of carrying that property is probably 3,000, but you have 1,000 coming from the first one to come and support the new qualification. And that is where the income comes from.
But you're living in this property, isn't it? How does the bank now pre-qualify the first property as 4,000 if it's your primary residence?
No, so the bank is making that assumption that you are moving from the first one into the new one.
Okay.
Into the new one, because the new one you only be approved for 5% if the goal is to move in there. Again, because you bought the first one at 5% doesn't, and it's your primary residence, doesn't mean that you should stay there forever. You understand? I bought my first property somewhere around Kemont. When RBC took me to Paradise, I was going to stay there. Then immediately RBC brought me back to St. John's. I said, no, I'm buying a new house in St. John's. And they approved me. Right? In cities where there's, wide space like Toronto, between Toronto and Barrie, it's 1 hour drive. So if you bought a house in Toronto and now your company is taking to Barrie, they will approve you. The same bank, they will approve you easily because it makes economic sense. Right? So you rent it. You can't leave it vacant. You rent it, and they will use today's market rent to calculate. Even if you don't have a tenant, we use the market estimate. And in St. John's, we get typically 4,000. The least we get is 3.8 or 3.9. And sometimes appraisers come around to check the quality of the house and the neighborhood, and then they tell whether it's 4,000, 4.1, or 3.9. These are the numbers we get, and we use the full amount to qualify you. The only thing is that where it goes outskirts of town, we know that there could be vacancy. Therefore, we could calculate the rent and still use 90%. You need clarity on that.
No, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm asking, so.
Yeah, so that everybody will clear. I get you, yeah.
Good question.
So if you're going for a mortgage, would you advise someone to go to the lenders or go to the bank?
That's a good question. Now, you could go to a lender and you not be approved, and you could come to the bank and be approved. You could also come to the bank and not approved, and go to a lender and be approved. It's tricky, just that we all use the same standard. The borrowing criteria is the same, right? In the past, lenders could have a lower rate than the banks. In today's market, it's way different, where the banks have lower rates because the lenders get their money from the banks. So you could go to a lender and then they'll get a mortgage from TD. So ask yourself, where are they getting the cut from? You understand? Let's say you went to East Coast Mortgage Brokerage, and then you got a mortgage, and they got it from Scotiabank. Definitely, Scotiabank took money from you and gave it to them, right? And the percentage they pay them as brokerage is coming from you, as part of profit they are making from you. So there's a space there, right? It depends on the instance. If a bank is not approving you, they are working the same space, like competitors.
Assuming they are approving you now, because I think the lenders now, they have varieties of banks to shop around for.
Exactly, but ask yourself whether what you are getting, you could have gotten it from your bank. You get a point? Could I have gotten this from my bank? Because in today's market, there's no disparity between the interest rate a broker has and what a bank has. It's the same. You go to any broker, it's like 4.09, 5%, 5 year. You go to the bank, it's the same. So it becomes a matter of choice and qualification. Whoever is willing to qualify me is where I'm going. Right? Whoever is willing to qualify me.
What about flexibility?
Whoever is willing to give you the best
Flexibility.
rate.
Flexibility comes to the bank, because if you have a concern, you can walk into a TD bank or RBC branch and your problem will be solved. In fact, COVID was a key example where all the banks gave payment vacation up to 6 months. So COVID is there, people are not working, people could, once you say you are coughing, okay, go and stay at home, government will give you 2,000. TD, RBC, Scotia allow their customers 6 months free mortgage.
Really?
Right? So payment vacation. So the banks have the capacity to carry some things. If let's say something happens to your family and you are now the single source income provider and you went to your bank, there are arrangements where they could give you a payment vacation up to 4 months just for you to get reprieve. If it's serious, in TD we have a document we could file, and if you have a doctor's report, you could even extend it up to about a year. So there's that flexibility coming from there, but the bottom line is qualification. If the bank is not qualifying you and a lender wants to do it for you, why not? Right? At that instance, but you are not stuck to anybody for the rest of the mortgage. After 5 years, you could move the mortgage from a lender to a bank, you could move from a lender to another lender, and anywhere. Right? So all these flexibilities are there.
So
Just to add to what he's saying as well, I've also seen instances where the bank can approve you for 400,000, and they go to a private mortgage specialist or a private lender, and they approve you for 500,000. I've seen instances like that, right? And the bank might, like you said, the bank might give you a better interest rate, but the private lender will give you a higher interest rate, but they'll approve you for more.
The qualification, right?
Right?
The qualification. The bottom line is qualification.
Yeah.
Right? So if you have equal qualification between two banks, then you look at interest rates and some terms of the mortgage. If you go to RBC today, if your goal is to pay your mortgage faster, it will be better to go with TD, because TD gives you 15% yearly prepayment privilege. RBC gives you 10%. Some places give 20% prepayment privilege. I'm not a fan of prepayment of a mortgage. I've said it many times. I don't like it because it's good to put the money in other investments. You can buy a property here, sit here, buy a property in Texas, rent it out to tenants, sit here and be feeding yourself without working. Live a life where people will question your source of income.
So I think all this whole thing you just explained to us now, are we supposed to have this knowledge, or we're supposed to get most of this knowledge from the realtor?
Well, it is proper to have the knowledge that bankers have. If it is
So
proper,
like I said, if you have a better realtor, which is knowledgeable, like her,
they will share information with you. Yeah, but it's not just for mortgage. For every investment, for everything in today's world, is do it yourself. So it's proper to know, to have credit knowledge like bankers do, because if you do, every time you present your documents for lending, you'll be approved. Right? Every time you do it, I know people within immigrant community and non-immigrant community where they present their documents to me first. Business, where they present their documents to me first, we work on it for like a month before they present it to the bank for approval, because we have to do some homework before you go. And if you know it yourself, I know so many newcomers who have been here for like 10 years. Some of them know because they talk to different bank officers who can share information with you. What should I do first? I have this business, I'm going to buy a commercial property. I don't have the 20% they are looking for. What can we do? We work together. We solve a problem before you present your document, right? And if you have this knowledge yourself, you will get approved for everything you are looking for, whether it's a personal financing or business financing.
So I should go from RBC to TD?
Well, the funny thing is that, when I was at RBC, some people moved to RBC because they were my friends and I was managing them. Then, by the time they moved, I was also going to TD.
They move with you.
Exactly. I had some people moving with me, but at the end of the day, then you keep moving.
Yes, sir.
It doesn't prevent you from having your bank account at RBC and having a mortgage at TD. Right? And the reverse is true. You can also have your banking at RBC, TD and have a mortgage somewhere. The most important, the bottom line is qualification. So I've had people reach out to me, like FOC will reach out to me. Hey, I have this client, somebody qualified them for 500. We are looking for 600. What are you looking for? I'll run the numbers and see if we could do it, right? If it's not going to work, if I know someone else who could also try, I say let this person try, because we know where the difference comes from. I know what causes the difference, right? But those ones I can share with you one-on-one, where the difference comes from. When somebody gets 500 and somebody gets 600, the same document. So those are the things that will make somebody go to a broker, a bank, or any institution.
Yeah, I'm coming to TV.
Okay, I think due to time, we're gonna move on. But if you have any other questions, I'll be here, he'll be here after the session, and you can ask those questions. So now we're gonna moving on to the next agenda, which is to have our guest speaker talk to us about her own journey, just to encourage some of us, and just kind of let us know that it is possible. Home ownership is possible. So I'll invite Dr. Mrs. O. She's a principal consultant of Lumigo Inc. to just have a brief one with us. Okay?
Thank you so much. Hi everybody, good afternoon. I'm sure that you guys have had a lot of information there, but I'm just here to encourage you. Where are they going to Okay, so I came into Canada as an immigrant in 2018, and I started from a rented room, I started from a rented one room in a 7-bedroom house. It was an old house. And from there I moved into another rented space. It was a 2-bedroom basement. So while I was doing all of these things, I was planning, I was saving. I think one of the things that I count as being blessed is just being surrounded by people who had information. It's possible to live here for 10 years and you don't have any property. It's possible to live here. I've heard a lot of people in Ontario say, oh, they've been there for 20 years, nothing to show for it. And it's because, number one, lack of information. So I think that's one of the blessings that I had in this land. I was in a circle of people who had information. If you hear the kind of myths surrounding real estate, it's so funny. They'll be like, oh, if you've not lived in Canada for 5 years, you can't buy a property. If you're here less than 1 year, a lot of things. But the best thing is to plug into the right source of information. Have a good realtor, have a good banker, mortgage banker or a broker, And it's such a privilege to have these people in the room with you guys here today. So yeah, back to my journey. So I moved from a 2-bedroom, and the year that we got our property, we got 2 properties together. We got a property in Ontario, and we also got a property here in Newfoundland. 1 month's difference. I mean, what made it possible? We're talking to our realtor, we're speaking to our brokers all along, so they were advising us on the kind of income that we needed. We're also doing our work. So based on the advice, we did what we needed to do. And when it happened, it was so seamless. But before then, we had tried with another realtor. I'm not going to mention the name of this realtor. Now, this is just bringing me to the fact that you have to work with an experienced realtor. It's not enough for them to just be a realtor, but they have to be experienced. They have to have all the requisite knowledge to help you. Sir, you were asking a question about knowledge, right? Sometimes you don't necessarily have to have the knowledge, but if you're working with somebody who is good, somebody who has your interest at heart. It's not just about the money they are making off selling the property, but it's also about what is good for my client, right? I run a business. I don't just go by, oh, this is good, money will get into my pocket. No, I'm looking out for my client. And that's something I see in FSC. You know, it goes beyond just selling a house to you. Sometimes she looks at the property and she says, don't buy it, it's not good for you. Even if she knows that she's going to make more commission off the property, but she looks at you and, you know, she knows that long run it's not going to pay you. So those are some of the things you're looking out for when you're looking for a realtor, right? So for us, before then, we had this realtor that we were working with. I don't know, she didn't know Jack, but it flopped. The 2 times we were going to buy a property, it flopped. And it was simple lack of information. I'm like, you know what he was saying? That if you present something to him, he can tell you if it's going to fly or not. This lady did not look at all of those things. We presented something to her. She just said, oh, just give it to the lender. And then it kind of flagged us, even before the lenders. You can't go back and fix these things. So these were preliminary checks that she would have done before she put in that document, right? So there's all these pits and all these moving parts. And that is why the realtor is a professional. That is why your banker is the professional, and you have to work. You can't know everything. Yeah, yes, you can do your due diligence, but you can't know everything to the dots and to the, you know, to the details that they would. So today, I'm here to encourage everyone. If you have the goal to purchase a property, the day you start to plan is the day you actually begin the purchase. It doesn't happen when you close. It happens from when you start to say, okay, I want to buy a house. What do I need? I need A, B, C, D. And then you start working towards it. It's doable. I am of the school of thought that nothing is impossible. So long as it's on the surface of the earth and it's something that other people are achieving, you can do it. If they say, oh, your income is not enough, what does it take? You go and hustle another second job or change your job. I did it, right? So I know that it's possible. But first of all, you have to know what are the requirements, and then you start working towards the requirement. It might take you another 6 months, it might take you another 1 year, but guess what? The end is that you're going to buy that property. So being an immigrant is not a limitation. If you look at Newfoundland and Labrador, many immigrants are just purchasing properties. So yes, you can be part of it. It's not rocket science. It's actually doable, and you don't need to have all the money in the world. If you key into things like the first-time home buyer savings plan accounts, whatever that is, I didn't use it, but now I'm looking back and I'm like, why didn't I even, utilize this thing? So yes, if I'm going to buy another property in 4 years, I'll probably utilize it, because I think there's a 4 years space from when you buy your last property. So yes, Chelsea, it doesn't matter that you just started your job and you just graduated, you can purchase a property even before the end of this year. So it's a mindset, and it's about opening yourself up to information, and you can do it. So right now I have multiple properties. I'm not going to mention how many, but this is me. Not doing any kind of crazy rocket science job, just a regular job, myself and my family. Our income is not over the roof like that. It's just within a normal Canadian family income. And then we're able to do all of this because the right planning, right? It's key. So I will drop my pen now.
That's all right. So before you drop your pen.
Okay.
Actually, I would like you to speak, since you're the key, right, the key speaker, right? So I would like you to speak about your achievements, because we're here to be motivated, right?
Yeah.
So tangible achievements that was, light people to want to be like you or above you. So that's one. And secondly, about knowledge. I believe about the desire to know. If you don't have the desire to know, even if your orator is good, I'm sure you will not do as much as, he said something about stress test. I stress her. Honestly, if I put on a stress test, I'll actually know whether she's floating or she knows what she's doing, right? So if she's trying to just talk me off and just shish me away, I'm like, oh, I guess this girl is only doing this one, this person. So you have to have the desire to know.
Of course.
I'm here less than a year, and someone told me, in fact, 3 months when I arrived there, I got transferred from Australia, and someone told me for you to get a PMP, it's going to take half a year, 1 year, blah, 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 blah. And guess what? It's less than 3 months I got it. So
when you say PMP, you mean like a provincial nomination? Yes. Okay.
Less than 3 months I got it. Even the fact that my company refused to sign on my behalf. I just wrote them a letter, give them everything my company gave to me, and look, this guy said they were not going to sign this because they don't due to some policies of the company. And somehow I got called, series of calls, and somehow, long story short, I got it. So the desire, you need to have the desire to know.
Absolutely.
So please tell us about your achievement so we can get motivated.
Yeah, I don't know if my achievement is supposed to be knowledge, but I've grown.
So I just on the motivation level, not.
I think growing is a mindset. Some people just believe that because they are immigrants, they are relegated to some kind of things or they are limited. And I don't think that's correct. Just like the same way you said, you know, people say, they said you can't get your pay. That's actually a very flawed, I don't know where that knowledge came from, but that's totally wrong. So yes, the desire to know, do your due diligence in everything that you do. I mean, what's the worst case? You try it and it doesn't work out, and then you know. There's nothing that teaches you better than experience. Now, I don't mean people should go and start experience. I mean, if you have people who have gone through it, already have the experience, of course, who are also professionals. Where do you get your information from? There's all sorts of information on the internet. You go on Google, you can even get drowned in the information. So where you get your information is key. I pay for knowledge. If I need to get something from someone, I pay for it. I don't mind, because I know how far that knowledge will take me. Some people would not pay for knowledge. They will scramble everywhere, and which is okay, depending on how deep. I'm a researcher, by the way, so depending on how deep you go into your research. So I'm a researcher, I know where to draw the line, I know where to pay, I know where to put my time into. So, like you said, seeking for knowledge is key. You can't be in a new country and you're not scouting for knowledge, especially if you have big goals. Some people have goals of establishing their businesses. So what are you doing about it? I was just talking to her about a business that I'm trying to work on. She's the professional, she's the banker, right? So I should be talking to people like that instead of going on internet. How can I start a business? Blah, blah, blah. So for me, getting information from the right source, which is why we are all gathered here, it will take you far. Instead of, imagine that person who told you, you can't get this thing in 3 months. What will it cost you? Just email the province. You can email the province and say, oh, I'm here from Australia. This is it. They will give you the first-hand information. So I think that's what has carried us far. Just making sure that every information we're sourcing, we're getting it from the right source. The worst thing that will happen to you is that you send a message and they will not respond. And it's not even here in this part of the world. If you send a message even to the government house, they will answer you. Right? So getting information from the right source is very important. It has helped me a lot in everything that I've done. Many grants that I've gotten for myself, for my business, it was all reaching out to the right source, not going through somebody who went through somebody who went, because you don't know if information has been diluted as it passed from hand to hand, right? So that's one of the key things that I'm going to share today, that information and getting the right information, it's key. So based on, we have different goals. Your goals are different from mine, but whatever your goal is, you set your goal, make sure you have the right information that will drive you to get the goal that you want. I don't know if I'm answering your question. I don't want to make it about me, but I tell you, that's one thing that we've done, myself and my husband. My husband runs, I'm going to talk about him for a bit. He runs a motor garage business. Before he started that business, he went through a lot of stress. You know why? Because many people in that business are mostly, they are not immigrants, they are people from locals. So for him to get the license to operate that business, oh my God, if he looked at his immediate community, he wouldn't go far. But he kept pushing, he kept pressing on, he was pointing out to where are the offices. He was emailing all the offices that cared to read his email. And it took him a long time, 6 months. He noticed that it was a market that they already monopolized. They don't want to give you the license because they don't want you to break into the market. But he kept pushing, and it's with the right information. Somebody will tell him, oh, reach out to this person. It was one lady he reached out to. That was the game changer. That was the woman who did everything for them. They got the license, and you know, it's been how many years now they've been in the business and they've been advancing and all of that. So whatever it is that your goal is, get the right information. It will drive that. I mean, aside from your desire to know and all of those nice things, no matter how much good that you are, if you don't have the right information, you will still, that thing will not, you will not birth that goal that you have.
Please, what's your husband's garage name?
Chris, that's what I want to say.
It's leads to the invention. He's one of our sponsors.
I'll need this garage name, please. Huh?
Yes, they're one of our sponsors for today. I will share the flyer with you as well, so you have that as well, that information as well.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. O. Thank you so much. So we also have a living testimonial in the house. Mr. Emmanuel, please just come forward for a living.
Yes, I'd like to introduce him, by the way.
Yeah. So last year he came for our home buyer session in June. And by September we got him a house, like a very beautiful house. He gave him the right information, he got the the knowledge and he was set to go. So, like I said, home ownership is possible. If you didn't get anything from this session at all, just know that home ownership is possible. If you wake up tomorrow morning and they ask you, what did you learn from this session? Home ownership is possible. And he is a life testimonial. He can tell you about it.
It's a lie, yo. Anyways, my name is Emmanuel in St. John's. I'm popularly known as Limbo. About this time last year, I came here for this same event like you are, and I had this whole mindset of bad information actually. If you're not a PR, you can't own a house. But I got to realize that even being a work permit holder in this country, you can own a house. So anyways, good information from here. A day after, I reached out, called, sent an email. 2 days after, I got the pre-approval done. And we started searching for a house. Now, I could have gotten the house in July, 1 month after, but I didn't find what I wanted.
Yeah.
So that's just the one thing that lingered until we got what we wanted. It was a brand new house on somewhere in Kenmount Terrace, and yeah, I love the place. So, and I wish you all the best. If you're looking to get a house, you're in the right spot, and trust me, you will get a beautiful house. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that testimonial. So yeah, home ownership again is possible. One more. We have just one more guest to talk. So it's just like 2 minutes. Just come and encourage your audience. Yeah, this is the last one. Yeah. So the right education is definitely key when it comes to getting a house in Canada. You don't want to get the wrong information.
So the very first thing I would say is that if you are here to buy a home, this is the realtor that you want to use, right? If you're in this room. But yeah, thank you so much. I came to encourage I perceive, but I've also learned one or two things. So yeah, immigrants, newcomers, one of the ways to actually establish yourself in a new land is to become a landlord, right? To become the lord of the land, right? So that's one way to establish yourself. And I would say I got our first home within 2 years, less than 2 years. And I got to Canada many years ago. I've been in Canada for more than 10 years. And yeah, so it's been an amazing journey. And you can also do the same. One thing I always love to tell people is that you can be anything. You know, many times when we come here, we are told, oh, start from the rock bottom and all, then grow your way up. You don't have to start from the rock bottom, all right? So if you're just new, I don't know, you know, the demographic of the room, but if you're new here, you don't have to start from the bottom. And if you're still starting from the bottom, if you're like me, who had a survival job, by the way, I was still doing my survival job when we got our first home, all right? So that should not limit you. But even if you have that survival job, you can go through the ranks and have your dream job and live the life. But then, one thing you also need to know is that I don't want you to be all about, I want to get, because there is never an end to get it. So you have to come to the reality that what do I really want for myself, and how can I walk my way, you know, through that process, and also ensure that there will be a time where I can actually enjoy the home that I now have. You don't want to buy a home and then you're working 20 hours a day and you're not even sleeping in the home, right? So I'm saying this to also give us perspective, because it's possible for us to come here and then we're just moving from one job to the other and not really living, right? So having a home is one of the ways that we live, but beyond having that home, we want to ensure that we enjoy ourselves in the home. So yeah, thank you so much for listening and thank you for coming.
Kindly tell us about your book.
All right, so I see that someone else in this room. Yeah, so we have a few books out. My latest book, Becoming Dr. Tolu. I would say it's more like an autobiography. It's my education journey. So what got to that book was that I'd always wanted to do a PhD right from when I can remember. But then, of course, I made the first class in the University of Nigeria. You know, had went on a full scholarship to the UK and all that. So I was thinking that the next thing would be a PhD, but I had a 6-year wait between when I finished my master's in 2013 and when I started my PhD in 2019. So when I eventually started my PhD in 2019 and came through the journey, I understood that the wait there made me to understand that now I'm not getting a PhD because I've always wanted it. I'm not getting a PhD for a purpose that is higher than just wanting it, right? And I thought the person that I became in the process of the wait is actually different from the person I would have become if I had gotten a PhD immediately, right? So that was one of the things that inspired me to write the book. And it's very raw, very authentic. You can get it on Amazon, and I think just this last week, it was part of the books displayed in the Memorial University. So hey, my book is I always love to encourage, people with my story or even with my journey. There's nothing too small to encourage people with. So yeah, thank you for asking.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for all the encouragement. So we're finally moving to the last session for today. So like all our speakers have mentioned, the right information is key, right? So this brings us to coaching 101. If you're looking to buy a house in 3 months, it's very possible, it's very feasible, it can be done. With the right education, knowing your goals, your timelines, your finances. Mr. Tunde is very knowledgeable. Anything regarding finance, he can definitely coach you. I can also coach you as well. So if you're looking to buy a house within the next 12 months, we have a coaching 101 session. It's not taxed at all, right? It goes by your availability. So let's say if you're available on Monday for 15 minutes, maybe once a month, or maybe even once in 3 months, I want to talk to us. We are definitely available to answer your questions and to coach you, right? So why sign up? Clear roadmap to avoid costly mistakes, as Dr. Joy has mentioned. Expert guidance is very key. So the thing, to definitely encourage you, if you're looking to buy within the next 12 months, to definitely sign up for this program. Okay, and now the 1-5 giveaway. So as a realtor, one of my goals is to ensure that my clients get a house. Apart from getting a house, I want to also assist them as much as I can. That's my goal. I like to help my clients as much as possible. So if you like to participate in the 1-5 giveaway, we're giving 4 participants. Please, the requirement is you're looking to buy a house within 12 months. We also, let's say, in August, September, we'll have another session. So let's say within that time, if you're looking to buy a house next year, you can sign up for that other session, right? But this one, so 12 months from today, we're now in March, so by next year, March, if you're looking to buy a house, you can sign up for this program. And again, it's very important that we also coach you, that we are not making the wrong decisions regarding your home purchase, right? For instance, if you're getting an existing property and you waive home inspections, and then you move into that property and that lots of issues, that boils down to us as professionals. So we cannot do that to you, right? So we want to coach you and make sure that you're doing things the right way, right? So how do you receive this money? After it's successful closing, it can be applied to your closing costs, or we can even give it to you, we can send it to you via e-transfer, a check, or however you want it. Okay, so to enroll for the 1-5 giveaway, please just scan this link, and then we'll choose the winners as they come in. And that's it for today. Thank you so much for attending this session. Thank you. Yeah, and there's food. Please don't go without taking some food.
What if it's an interview session?
Yeah, so the winners, because of the sake of time, I would email the winners.